Well, welcome back, everybody, to this penultimate session of the conference. So this is a session on OSM, on the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, on how ArcGIS tools can interact with that, but also on a Map-a-thon. So we are joined today by Sam Colchester, Partnership Associate at the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, who will run us through the process of a Map-a-thon, and also by my colleague Dean Kensock, who's part of the content development team here at ESRI and focuses on our tools, our ArcGIS tools that allow us to interact with OSM data. So I will hand straight over to them so that they can run you through this session. Sam, over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Olivia. It's a pleasure to be here. So I work for an organization called the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, also known as HOT. We're working with OpenStreetMap to build a free and open map of the world. In most of the places that we work, OpenStreetMap is the most accurate available mapping source. So I'm going to be teaching you how to do some humanitarian mapping during this session. But first off, what is humanitarian mapping? Well, around the world, natural disasters and humanitarian crises affect millions of individuals. But in many of the areas where these disasters occur, the communities where these individuals live are quite literally missing from the map. This makes it very difficult for first responders to deliver life-saving aid and for them to also plan disaster relief efforts. So the Missing Maps project is an effort established by the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, known as HOT, which is where I work, MSF, which you might know better as Doctors Without Borders, the British Red Cross, and the American Red Cross to create detailed digital maps of the world's places which currently do not have detailed maps. Now, in this GIF you can see on your screens right now, this is an example from a few years ago where volunteers from all over the world mapped almost 5 million buildings as part of a malaria elimination campaign across Southern Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America. The map data created from this project helped to conduct an effective household spraying campaign to eliminate malaria. Now, at this stage, you might quite rightly ask, why don't we just use existing map data from other sources like Google Maps or Apple Maps? Well, this is a map of a large city in the Democratic Republic of Congo called Baraka. It's actually two maps. On the left-hand side, you can see what Google Maps had representing that city at the time. Now, looking at that map on the left-hand side, you'd be forgiven for thinking that no one lived there. There's no buildings or infrastructure in that area, and no roads apart from that main one snaking down the middle there. But of course, this is not true. Baraka is in fact a thriving trading city. It's home to around 120,000 people. So in recognition of this, a few years ago, about 70 volunteers came together and created the map you can see on the right-hand side. And they did that in one evening. And you can see that they added crucial additional details to the map, including additional roads, waterways, buildings, and infrastructure. Now, it's really important that Baraka was mapped to this level of detail because Baraka experiences regular cholera outbreaks. And to track the spread of cholera, you do need to know where patients affected by the disease live. And that's very difficult to do without access to a detailed map like this one on the right-hand side. And effectively, you're doing something which I think we're all a bit more familiar with now. You need to conduct contact tracing. And you can't conduct contact tracing unless you have access to a detailed map like this one on the right-hand side. So to put what we're going to be doing today in context, the Missing Maps project actually involves 3 distinct steps. And today we're entirely involved in the first crucial step, which is known as remote mapping. And that's where volunteers like ourselves look very closely at satellite imagery and trace on top of the imagery where features can be seen, like buildings or roads. In a second stage, these maps are then checked by a team of expert mappers called validators. So they're going to look very closely at all the work you've done, fix your work if necessary, or approve it quickly if you've mapped accurately and nicely. Finally, these checked maps are taken to the field, where local mappers will add crucial details like street names and place names and the locations of health centers. Now, we're all going to be focusing on one project today. We're all going to be mapping in South Sudan. So as COVID vaccines start arriving in low and middle income COVAX participant countries, successful vaccination programs in those countries will depend on geographic data to help identify priority population groups and to plan efficient last mile vaccine delivery. Aware of the likely data gaps in many countries, Map Action is currently focusing on South Sudan, a country with imminent COVAX deliveries and known data gaps. The aim is to build a portfolio of relevant data sets while learning from the process to assist further work in other COVAX countries. This initiative is actually part of a wider GIM, or Geographic Information Management Initiative, which has been set up between IMAP, CartONG, Map Action, ALCIS, and the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. The GIM initiative aims to strengthen the COVID-19 vaccine rollout through geographic data, systems, and analysis in 15 low-income countries with acute humanitarian needs. So that's a bit of background on humanitarian mapping and on the project we're going to be working on specifically. But from now on in, I'm going to be demonstrating how to actually map. Now, the best way for you to learn how to do this is to follow me step by step as I run through this process. I'm going to exit my screen shortly and run through it on my own screen step by step. If you're lucky enough to have two screens, get what I'm doing up on one screen and get what you're doing up on the other screen. If you don't have two screens, not a big problem. I'm going to try and describe as best as I can where I'm clicking and what I'm doing. Please feel free to use the Q&A if you have questions or if you come across any issues. So the first thing to note is you do not need to download or install any software in order to start doing this humanitarian mapping. This is all browser-based. You just need to use a web browser. Now, you can use any web browser, just avoid Internet Explorer. It simply doesn't work with the tools we're going to use. You then need to visit a website called the Tasking Manager. Now, I'm going to paste a link to the Tasking Manager, including instructions to sign up, directly into the Slido. So if you follow the link that's just been announced in Slido, that'll take you to the Tasking Manager. It actually takes you to a step-by-step guide of how to create an account. I'm going to run through that on my own screen as well. So these steps are detailed in that guide if you follow steps 1 to 4, but I'm going to run through the same thing. So this is the Tasking Manager. This is the website you need to create a mapping account on. Remember not to use Internet Explorer. You can use any other browser. When you're on the Tasking Manager website, you need to select Sign Up in the upper right-hand corner of the page. Once you've selected Sign Up, you need to enter a name and an email address. It will then ask you if you have an OpenStreetMap account. Now, if you already have an OpenStreetMap account, you can select here, I already have an OpenStreetMap account. If you've not created an OpenStreetMap account before, you will need to create one now. So select Create OpenStreetMap Account, and that will actually open up a new tab in your browser. In this new tab, you need to enter your email address and confirm it. You need to enter a display name. Now, a display name is like a username. There are over 7.5 million users on OpenStreetMap, so you're going to have to select quite a unique username here. enter a password and confirm that password. And when you select sign up, it's going to take you through some terms and conditions. After you've reviewed those terms and conditions, you'll be sent a confirmation email. So check your email inbox for that confirmation email. You will need to select the link in that confirmation email to finish your account setup. It can take a minute or two for that confirmation email to arrive. It may also arrive in your spam folder, so it's worth checking your spam folder. Okay. Now, while you're filling out these fields and you're waiting for that confirmation email to arrive, let me just describe what you're signing up to here. You're signing up to a service called OpenStreetMap. Now, OpenStreetMap is a web map, a bit like Google Maps or Apple Maps, but the difference with OpenStreetMap is that anyone in the world can edit OpenStreetMap. It's been around now for around 16 years. It started by a student. And in the early days, just small patches of the world were mapped by mapping enthusiasts. But over time, more and more people have contributed to OpenStreetMap, and it has become effectively a map of the world. So by creating an account right now, you're becoming one of the latest editors of OpenStreetMap. Okay. So once you've selected that link that arrives in that confirmation email, you're going to be taken to a welcome page. I want you to actually ignore that welcome page and instead click back to the Hot Tasking Manager tab, which is the first website we started out in. When you click back to the original tab you're in, the Hot Tasking Manager tab, it will now ask you if you've finished your registration on OpenStreetMap. Now, if you've selected that email link and confirmed your email address, you have finished your registration on OpenStreetMap, and you can select Login at this stage. This will allow you to log in using your new OpenStreetMap account. So enter your username or email address of your OpenStreetMap account, enter your password, select Login, and then finally select Grant Access, and that will finish the sign-in process. When you're first signed in, it's likely you're going to be taken to your settings page. It looks a bit like the one I'm looking at here. You'll see your username. You should see your username in the upper right-hand corner. You should see your name in the upper left-hand corner. It might say Beginner Mapper just below that. There's lots of additional fields down here. You don't need to fill these in. There's no need to fill these additional fields in now. I'll just point out that you can change your language input down here. There's a drop down. You can just select from 20 different languages if you prefer this website to be in a slightly different language. Okay. So if you can see your username in the upper right-hand corner of this website, the Tasking Manager, you're good to go. So the next thing we need to do is to find the actual project we're all going to be mapping together. We can find the project by selecting Explore Projects. So within the Tasking Manager, you'll see an Explore Projects button. When you select Explore Projects, you're going to see a massive list of available projects. Now, a project is an area of the world that's been defined as needing mapping for humanitarian purposes. We can filter through this list by several different means, but the one we're going to use to find the project is a unique code which relates to the mapping project we're all going to work on in this session together. That code you can type into the Search Projects box, a search field. That code is 10748. So type the number 10748 into that search box. And that will filter through the thousands of available projects and just show you an individual tile, the one project we're going to work on this session together, below that search field. You can launch that project by selecting on that tile. Just left click on that tile and it will launch the project. Now, if you've got lost while I've been doing that, I'm going to just give you a direct link to the page I'm on now. So if you check your Slido, you'll see a direct link to the page that I'm looking at now. So this is the project we're working on. On the left-hand side, we can see a description of the project. It tells us why we're mapping this project, what the data is going to be used for. On the right-hand side, we see an overview map. It indicates the location of the project. It's actually indicated by a red dot in the middle of the map. So this project is in South Sudan. It's actually in the southwestern region of South Sudan, around a settlement called Yambio. The most important part of this page, though, is actually in the bottom left-hand corner, where it says types of mapping. Under types of mapping, there's a series of icons. Most of those icons for this project are grayed out, but one of them is bold and dark, and that icon is a road icon. So that's instructing us that for this project, the only thing we need to map are roads. So the only thing we need to look for in the satellite imagery are roads, and the only thing we need to add to the map are roads. Really important that we're clear on that. So we're focusing on roads to the exclusion of everything else. They're the priority. To proceed now, you can select Contribute, which is a red button in the lower right-hand corner of this page. Again, just check you can see your username in the upper right-hand corner. You won't be able to proceed past this stage unless you can see your username in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, on the left-hand side now, I see some detailed instructions. These are pretty comprehensive. There's no need for you to read through these very quickly right now. But if you're to come back to mapping after this event, which I highly recommend you do, it's good to read these instructions to tell you what to look out for and how to map this project. To the right-hand side, I see the overview map again, but this time it's more zoomed in. This time I can see the whole project area. Now, the project area is defined by this grid of small squares. This is a huge area. It would take one person probably weeks to map. But the tasking manager, the website we're using here, has split this massive area into lots of small squares. And that allows each one of us to select our own unique square in this grid and map that square independently. And while we're mapping it, it locks it so no one else can come in and map over your work while you're doing it. Also means that this whole project can get mapped much faster. So what we need to do here is select any transparent square in this grid and then select Start Mapping in the bottom right-hand corner of the page. You can either do that manually, so you could zoom into this grid and left-click on a transparent square and select Map Selected Task, or you could select Map a Task. That will take you to a random available square in this grid. Either way, you're selecting that button in the bottom right-hand corner, Map a Task or Map Selected Task. Now, what that does is it launches a new tab. And in this new tab, it's opened up what's known as the Rapid Editor. Now, this Rapid Editor is an AI-assisted editor. And I'm going to go through a bit more detail of how that works. But I'm just going to explain the fundamentals first of all. So what's happened here is I've zoomed in to a square in that grid I was looking at earlier. I can now see some background imagery. That's the landscape of South Sudan. What I want to draw your attention to, though, is this bright teal border, which you should see sitting at the edge of your area. It's like a bright teal box. That boundary is super important because it indicates the extent of the area which you should map. So you need to focus all of your mapping inside of that teal box. Now let's think back to the instructions. The instructions have asked us to map roads. So what this is really asking us to do is to map all the roads which sit inside of this teal box. Now to map roads, I'm going to need to find them in the satellite imagery, and to find them, I'm going to need to zoom in. And to zoom in, you can either scroll in if you're using a mouse wheel, or double click on the imagery if you want to zoom in. Now, this is where the AI-assisted editor kicks in. Once you've zoomed in enough, you should be able to start seeing some streaks or lines across your map. Some of those lines will be previously mapped roads. I can see this orange line here is a previously mapped road. So if you see any lines which are light orange, like this one here, or white, or tan colored, or red, those are likely to be existing mapped roads. So you don't need to add a road on top of an existing map road. It's already been done. Remember, OpenStreetMap is 16 years old. It's likely someone has edited the area you're looking at before. But these pink roads are suggested roads. These are roads which the AI has picked out from the satellite imagery. Now, this is why this is AI assisted. These are just suggested roads. We need to assess whether or not we actually want to map these. Now, you might find that the suggested roads, the bright pink lines, if you can't see them, you're going to need to zoom in a bit more. You might find that they're slightly obscuring the map, or they're obscuring the satellite imagery. To just toggle them on and off, you can select at the top of your screen the Rapid button. Once you've selected the Rapid button, you can uncheck here Facebook roads, and that will hide them. Now, if you like keyboard shortcuts, much easier to use a keyboard shortcut to do this. Hold Shift and press R to toggle on and off the suggested rapid roads. Now, the objective is not to add all of the roads that are being suggested. Actually, we're going to be highly selective. We're only going to be adding probably 1 or 2 roads per teal box that is selected. When we're looking to add roads to OpenStreetMap, first off, we're only really looking for roads that are connecting to settlements. We're only interested in roads that are connecting one settlement to another settlement. We're not interested in roads which just lead to a single house, or lead to a farm, or lead to the edge of a river or water body like a lake. We can ignore all of those roads. The only roads we're interested in are roads that are connecting settlements to each other. So I need to assess whether or not this suggested road, let's start off with this one, is connecting to a settlement or not. And the way to do that is to zoom into your imagery and look for buildings along the length of the road. So I can see there are buildings clustered around this suggested road here. It continues northwards up my square and does connect to some other buildings up here. So I think actually this road is worthy of being added. It is connecting buildings to each other, multiple buildings to each other. Let's go for another road which we might not think worthy of adding. So also very short sections of road, not worth adding. If it's under a few hundred meters long, not worth adding. I can see a very short section of road here, which is recommended. Let's toggle the data on and off. It's only leading to the little cluster of houses, and it's very short. I can see the distance in the bottom left-hand corner, my scale bar. Tells me this road is about 150 meters long. Pretty short, I'm not gonna add it. So I'm not interested in adding these short branches. Instead, I'm looking again for connectivity between different settlements. Also, I'm not gonna add this one because it's a short branch. Now, optional, if you find them a bit distracting, you can tell the Rapid editor that these roads shouldn't be added by selecting them. If you left click on one of these roads and you think it shouldn't be a road, you can then select ignore this feature, which is keyboard D. That hides it. Now, you don't need to do this for every road you find, but it can be useful. But for the roads that you actually want to add, for example, the one up here, which I do want to add, you need to left click on the feature and then choose to use the feature. And you can see that in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Okay. Just quickly log in. Sorry about that. Okay, so once you've chosen to use a feature, it actually turns that feature into a road. Now, once you've decided to use that road, you then need to classify the road. Now, road classification in OpenStreetMap, on the face of it, sounds very complex because there are lots of different road categories going from the highest of motorway all the way down to the smallest type of road or highway, which is known as path. In between, there's lots of other categories, lots and lots of categories. However, I know from where we're mapping here, in these areas of rural South Sudan, almost all of the roads you're going to be adding need to be classified either as a minor road or a residential road. Now, most of the time, it's going to default to identifying the road you've just chosen to use as a residential road. Now, most of the time, that's not actually going to be correct. Let me describe what a residential road is. A residential road is a road within a settlement which has houses either side of it and is connecting different areas of a settlement to each other. So it's within a larger settlement like a town. You have roads which have houses either side or buildings either side. That is a residential road. The other road type I mentioned, which is very common and the one you're going to be adding most frequently, is a minor road. Now, minor roads are roads which connect different settlements to each other. They're not lined with roads, with buildings. They don't have buildings either side of them. They connect different settlements to each other. And that's what this one does. It's connecting these clusters of houses here to these clusters of houses here. So this is just a minor road. So I need to change the tag or the identifier of this road by selecting residential road in the upper left-hand corner to change that type. And then I can search in this search box for minor and just type into the search box. After a few characters, it will recommend me minor/unclassified road. That's the one I want to use. That's the one you're going to be using, I imagine, 90% of the time. Once you select that tag, it changes to a tan color. That's the unique color of a minor/unclassified road. Okay. Just quickly looking at my square here, I would say that almost all of the roads here need to be tagged. In fact, all of them need to be tagged or identified as minor roads. Most of the ones that are being suggested, though, I'm actually going to forget about. This one would be ignored. Let me just check if this one should be added. So I'm again using my Shift R to turn on and off the visibility of this particular recommended road. I can see it's going out beyond the edge of my teal area, and I'm just going to check beyond the edge of my area, which is good practice. Check beyond the edge of your area to see if it's connecting to any other settlements. I can see it is connecting to settlements over here, so I will actually add this one as well. So I'm going to select it and select use this feature. And then again, change it to a minor/unclassified road. Okay. I'm going to check this one up here. And I can see it kind of fizzles out. You can see it just fizzling out. There's no settlement to the end of this track. And so I'm not going to add this road. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go through all of these and select ignore this feature. It will actually not add any unless you've selected to use the feature. But that one I wouldn't add. Equally, this one I'm not going to add. It just fizzles out here. And this one might be worth adding. Let's just see. Follow the track. See if it ends up in a settlement. Not really. No, it fizzles out. I'm not going to add that one. So I might be done with my square. Let's check this one. You'll also see tracks which are very, very narrow, and they may not be worth mapping. You've got to think that only really a four-wheel drive has got to be able to get down these tracks. If they're too narrow, they won't be worth adding. Good question. What to do if we're not sure about a road? Is it better to map the road or leave it off the map? I would say it's better to be quite conservative with your mapping of roads. It's quite easy to get into a situation where you have lots and lots of roads over mapped and you get a kind of spaghetti junction of roads. It's better to be a bit more conservative. Only really add roads if you can see that they are connecting settlements to each other. Okay. I'm actually happy with my square now. I'm not going to add any more roads. I think I'm all mapped up. I think that these suggested ones aren't leading to settlements. Remember, this AI-assisted road recognition, what it's really looking for are the tracks. It's looking for linear features in the landscape. It doesn't know whether or not those linear features are important or not, where to make that decision. So we need to be highly selective. So I've added those 2 roads. Now I feel like my square is complete. Let's just add this one. Actually, I can see this one is going up northwards and is connecting to settlements up here. So let's add this one. I'm going to select it and I select use this feature and I change the category to minor unclassified road. Okay. When you're happy with your square, you need to save your work. So when you think you've completed all the roads in your square, you need to save your work. And to save your work, you press the save button, which is in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. After you press the save button, access. After you press the save button, on the left-hand side of your map view, you'll see the save pane. The save pane has lots going on within it, but actually the bit that's important for us is right at the bottom. You just need to select upload to finish the save process. Now you need to make sure you save before you quit your square, otherwise your work won't be uploaded onto OpenStreetMap. If you're eagle-eyed, you might notice there's a checkbox here that says, I would like someone to review my edits. All of your edits will be reviewed, irrespective of whether or not you check that box. Because remember, your work is going to be validated. It's going to be checked by someone who knows this landscape, who knows how to check these errors, and they will fix your work if there are errors. So leave that unchecked, no need to check it, and press upload. When you press upload, you get a spinning wheel and a pop-up. When that disappears, your save button will go back to 0. And either, if you had more roads to map, you could continue mapping them. Or, like me, if you'd finished your square, you need to go back to the tasking manager. I go back to the tasking manager tab. And when I'm in this tab now, I need to mark the status of my square. And I can see the task status on the right-hand side here. And it asks, is this task completely mapped? What this is asking is, are all the roads inside of your area mapped? Inside of your box mapped? Are you happy with it? Now, if you were confident that you've mapped it fully and there was nothing more to add, you'd mapped all the roads that needs to be added there, then you could select yes in response to this question. And then you could submit your task as completely mapped. Now, if you'd run out of time, if you got bored of your square, if you weren't confident your square was fully mapped, there's no pressure. You can always select no in response to this question and mark your square as incomplete. What that does is it unlocks your square and allows someone to continue mapping it. Now with yes selected, I'm confident it's complete. This will actually lock my square and pass it on to a validator who checks my work. So with either of those selected, you can then select submit task. And that takes you back to the overview map and you can continue mapping. Now you may have selected a rural area. Let's just do one more task. You may have selected a rural area and you may find that no roads are suggested at all. That can happen. You're not guaranteed to have roads in the area you've selected. If you confirm that there are no roads there, there's none that are being suggested, just navigate back to the original tab and mark your square as completely mapped because you have fulfilled the instructions for that square. You've mapped all the roads, there weren't any roads to add. Okay. If you lose your border, if your border, it's very important you can see that bright colored border. If it just disappears for some reason, refresh your page, it should show up again. Okay. It's very important you see that border. If you map outside of that border, you risk mapping over your top of your neighbor's work. So it's very important to focus your mapping inside of your border. Okay. Yeah, so good question. Is there a reason to ignore the side roads, the little branches of roads? Expediency, is it harmful to include them? It's not harmful to include them. It's expediency. Really, we're trying to get this project mapped as fast as possible. We don't want to spend too much time mapping these side roads that aren't important, that are just leading off roads which are linking settlements. If it's only going to take a few minutes to get off a track and connect to a different settlement, there's not much needed in mapping that side road if it's only 100 yards or so, 100 meters or so. Yeah. Okay, great. So we're going to come back to this, but I'm going to hand over to Dean now, who's going to run through how ESRI integrates directly into Rapid.
Great, thank you, Sam. Go ahead and share my screen. That was really useful. I was pleased to see that walkthrough. I'm looking forward to doing some of that mapping myself. So as Olivier mentioned at the beginning, ESRI has been doing quite a bit of work recently with OpenStreetMap. And today I wanted to show you just 3 things that we've been doing recently that are related to the work that Sam was describing. So we're going to go back to Rapid here to start. So ESRI is also interested in seeing OpenStreetMap made better over time with more and more data around the world. So in the last several months, we've been collaborating with the developers to Rapid to integrate additional data sets. So if we go back to that Rapid button that Sam was showing earlier, you'll notice the roads and buildings that are available as AI detections and suggestions. There's this additional option to view and manage data sets. If you click into this, you'll see there's a gallery of other data sets that are available to integrate into Rapid. These are data sets that are coming from authoritative GIS data providers, national mapping agencies, local governments, and so forth, that are members of the ArcGIS user community and who have volunteered to share that data so that it can be integrated into OSM through tools like Rapid. So I've scrolled through a couple of these, and I'm just going to add a couple examples. This New Zealand buildings layer, which was recently added, that's data from LINS, a mapping agency for New Zealand, and then this Orange County, California buildings layer. So I'm going to add those to my map, and I'm going to zoom to, in this case, the New Zealand buildings to start. So this is very similar to what Sam was showing before, whereas I zoom into large scales. I'll zoom in here to the Christchurch area. Features will begin to appear on the map and will be compared to what's available in OpenStreetMap already. So as I zoom into large scales, you'll see building features begin to display. And these buildings in yellow are the layers that are coming from the New Zealand buildings data set. And if I zoom all the way in, I can see how these buildings compare to the imagery on the ground. So this is very detailed imagery for this part of the world, and you can see that the buildings overlap quite nicely. If I select one of these buildings, like Sam was showing earlier, I can choose to use this feature. And I can also see that there's some additional attributes that have been provided. In this case, there's a building tag, there's an ID tag, and there's a source tag. So some additional attributes like what Sam was showing earlier for the roads, but in this case, coming from the data provider. I'm going to quickly go to that other data set that I mentioned in Orange County, just to show another example of that. So if I zoom in here, let's see if I can find some features that are in the map. In this case, I'm zoomed into kind of a residential area, it looks like. And if I select a feature here, you'll notice that there are many tags that have been appended to this data, including a full address set of tags that can be available, as well as the height of the building. So this is an example of how detailed, authoritative GIS data that might have good quality geometry, but also additional attributes could be integrated into Rapid in addition to the AI generated features that we were looking at previously. So if you're aware of data sets for different parts of the world that you think would add value to OpenStreetMap, feel free to contact ESRI. You could reach us at osm@esri.com, and we can work with the data provider to bring that into Rapid. Another thing that we've been doing with OpenStreetMap is making it available to consume within ArcGIS applications. So if you're an ArcGIS user, you have access to ArcGIS Online or some other ArcGIS applications, you have access to live feeds of OpenStreetMap data. So here I'm zoomed into the South Sudan area where this project work is happening. You can see here a layer that Sam shared with me showing where you guys will be doing most of the editing. And I just wanted to show you an example of how you can access OSM within ArcGIS. So I'm going to zoom into a city within South Sudan. And now I'm looking at the OpenStreetMap base map layer that should be familiar to you if you're a user of OpenStreetMap. So now I can add additional data to my map. If I go to Add Data and browse Living Atlas layers, the Living Atlas is a collection of curated content coming from ESRI and a number of other organizations. And I've already searched for OSM Africa. So I'm filtering for this part of the world data that's from OpenStreetMap for Africa. And I'm going to add a couple layers. One, I'll add buildings. And then I also want to add roads. In OpenStreetMap, roads are tagged with a highway tag. So I'm going to use this OSM highways layer and add those two layers to the map. So I can see those a little better. I'm going to change my base map to a dark gray version of the OpenStreetMap map. So here you can see on the map highways that I can turn on and off. And this is a live feature layer, and then buildings that I can turn on and off. And because it's a feature layer, I can click on it and get access to the geometry of the feature as well as whatever tags have been added. So for this building, I can see that it's a place of worship. If I wanted to add additional information to this building, maybe I was familiar with it, I can actually click through from this pop-up and it'll go into the OpenStreetMap editor and it'll take me directly to that feature. And I can see what tags have been added for that feature. If I knew the name of the feature, for example, I could go ahead and add that and then save that edit like Sam was showing earlier. So again, this is an example of how you can consume OpenStreetMap data as live feature layers in ArcGIS Online. We will have live feature layers for every part of the world, all regions, Africa, Asia, South America, and so forth. And they're updated with minutely diffs from OpenStreetMap. So as edits are made to OpenStreetMap, those edits appear within these feature layers within just a minute or two. The last thing I wanted to show you quickly is a little dashboard application that I put together using some of these live feature layers. So in this dashboard, we're looking at the area in South Sudan where you guys will be doing your editing work within this kind of orange box area. The squares are in that area of the world. And this dashboard is showing how many features exist within the map extent that we're looking at. So when we started this session, there were, I think, 2,773 features. So I can see you've already added 10 roads to the map since we just got started here just a few minutes ago. So that's quite encouraging. So this dashboard will actually update in real time as edits are made to the map, as roads are added. And then if other editors are doing edits to features like buildings, those will also appear in the map. And I can zoom into a specific part of the map if I'm interested and find out how many features exist in that area. So we'll be able to keep track of the edits over the course of this Map-a-thon in near real time. That was everything that I wanted to show from ArcGIS. So again, if you're interested in sharing any data to have it appear within Rapid, you could email us at osm@esri.com. Or if you have layers that you'd like to appear within our editor applications, you could also contact us via that email address, and we can help define layers for your area of interest. With that, Sam, I'll hand it back to you. Maybe we've gotten some more questions.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks so much. Great to see how that integrates so nicely. So I really, the last square I was showing you was kind of focused on minor roads. It was in a rural area, and I was looking at roads that connected settlements to each other that weren't lined with buildings. But here I'm in a larger settlement. I'm actually in a settlement called Yambio, and a lot of the roads have been mapped already in Yambio, but some of them haven't. So again, this kind of bright orange road, that's already mapped. That's actually, if you hover over it, it will tell you what it is. That's a primary road. But coming off that primary road, I can see these additional roads, and they haven't been mapped yet. Well, the suggested roads. Now again, I'm just shifting, shift R-ing so hold shift down and press R to toggle on and off that suggested road data. And just looking here, I can see that there are tracks running through the settlement here, which have been recognized by Rapid, and they might be worthy of adding actually. So I think that this one here in particular, this long one, let me highlight it. If I hover over it, it highlights it, could be worth adding. And this is clearly a residential road because it's sitting within a settlement and it's got buildings either side of it. So it's absolutely a residential road. So I'm going to choose to use this one. So I can left click on it and then select use this feature. Now, almost the default option seems to be residential road for Rapid. And this works out quite nicely for me this time. I can see residential road there. And I'm going to leave it as that because that's correct. But what you may see sometimes is that the Rapid editor doesn't actually connect the suggested road up to an existing road occasionally. And this is because it's just run into a bit of a problem here. It's run into vegetation here, and it's run into buildings. And so I think that the recognition has slightly failed here. So I've got a kind of gap between where the road was recognized here and this other residential road. And I do need to connect it. So where you see these gaps, you do need to connect them up because connectivity in a road network is really important. If the humanitarian work is going to be using this in a sat-nav device, they need to know when they're going down this road here, they can take a left onto this road, which can connect to this other part of the settlement here. If I don't connect it up, it will think that this is a dead end. So it's super important to connect up roads, make sure you have connectivity. So to manually map a road, we're going to use the editing tools in the editor. Right next to the Rapid button, you can see there's 3 editing tools. One is called point, one is called line, one is called area. When we're mapping roads, we always use the line tool. So we're going to do some manual editing now. And to start drawing with the line tool, just left click on line, middle button among those 3. And you'll notice it changes to a blue color. That means that tool is now active. Now with that tool active, find the end of the road which you want to connect. So find the end of the road, hover near the end of it. And when you hover near the end of it, that end node there, that end point, that white point there, you'll see it turn red. And that means if you click now with your left mouse button, if you tap your left mouse button, it will connect the new road you're drawing to the existing one. So make sure you can see it highlighted red like that. That means it's connecting. The eagle-eyed, you'll also notice next to your crosshairs there's a little green icon. That also means it's connecting to the end node there. So make sure you can see it highlighting there. Left click with your left mouse button. So tap your left mouse button and that will connect your newest node to the existing one. And then you want to click along the length of the road that you're adding. So where you come to a corner, you could increase your frequency of clicks to make it more accurate. I think this is passing under the tree. This is probably why the Rapid tool failed to recognize this, passing underneath this vegetation. I'm clicking along the length of the road, trying to click in the middle of the road. Here it's passing between 2 buildings. And finally, it connects to this other road. Now, to connect to an existing road, if you're in the middle of a segment, again, hover near to it until you see it glowing red. That means you're going to connect to it. Now, this is the final point or final node in my road, and I need to do something slightly different. I need to left click to connect, but then I need to click again on top of that final point to finish the road. So you're actually double clicking on the final node of your road, the final point of your road. That finishes the line feature you've drawn. Okay. After you've finished it, you'll notice your cursor is now free to move, and you need to now classify this line object. It doesn't know what this is. I need to tell the editor what this is. And it's a continuation of this residential road, so it's a residential road. So again, I look to the upper left-hand corner of my editing screen at what's known as the tagging pane. And in here, I search for residential. After a few characters, it will recommend the residential road tag. And you simply left-click on residential road, and that will assign that particular tag or identifier to the shape. And once that's done, you've mapped the first road manually. Okay. So you can see how the Rapid editor saves us time there. Clicking along the length of that road is the longest part of drawing roads. So although we're getting quite a lot of false positives here, some of these pink lines aren't worth adding, it is still saving us a lot of time, because clicking along the length of a road like that, getting those corners accurate, can take some time. Great. Please feel free to continue asking questions. We've got about 8 minutes left of the session. Yeah, great question. So it looks like the AI misses some vertices on linear features. Can you change some of the vertices if you see that they're a bit askew? Yeah, so if you feel like the suggested road could be improved upon, let's just say I use this suggested road here. First of all, you have to accept the suggested road. So left click on the suggested road and select use this feature. That then changes it into an actual editable feature. Now it's changed the tag of that road or the identifier to service road. I don't think that's correct. I think this is another residential road. So I'm just going to change the tag quickly. So I've changed that to residential road. Now, could I improve the accuracy of this road? Probably could actually, yeah. So you see here, the recommended road is actually passing through some buildings. There's a building here. Let me just toggle my data. There's a building here, a narrow building. You can see the shadow it's casting. And you can see that the suggested road is actually passing through it. So I can improve this. You can improve any existing OpenStreetMap data by left-clicking on the data you want to improve. That selects the object. Now I have a couple of options here. So either I can drag an existing node to a better position. So hold your left mouse button down on an existing node to reposition that node. Or I can add an additional node, and I can do that by hovering near the center of any straight section of the line. You see this little gray pointy arrow. If I hover over that, I get a little green plus sign next to my cursor. If I left click with that plus sign showing and hold my left mouse button down, I can create and position a new node. That's probably what I'm going to do. I can also shift an existing junction here. You see this join node here. I can left click on it and drag it into a better position. And so by doing all three things, moving existing nodes, adding new ones, I can improve the accuracy of a road that's suggested like that. Amazing. We have a GIS surveyor from South Sudan. So this is the gold standard. When we have people doing mapping in areas that they are very familiar with, you're going to be producing the highest quality data. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I responded to that. I think there are opportunities to add that type of data into Rapid like I was demonstrating. The one thing I would add is that OpenStreetMap is an open data project. The data is shared under an open database license, ODBL. So in order for the data to be added into OpenStreetMap, it needs to be available under an OSM, under an open data license that's compatible with OSM. So public domain data or ODBL data or Creative Commons data could be added into OpenStreetMap.
Fantastic. Great. That's great to have had that question. A good question. I noticed most of the imagery being used are high resolution. So, I mean, you could, if you want to, visit this area and start tracing agricultural parcels. The focus of this project is mapping roads only, because that's the priority for the COVAX campaign. But yeah, if you're enthusiastic about mapping this area and you want to do it on OpenStreetMap separately, please feel free to do so. That's the beauty of OpenStreetMap, is that you can contribute anywhere. Another question, does Google Maps and OpenStreetMap have the same coordinate system? I overlay one layer with some point features created on OpenStreetMap to Google Maps and the features located in different locations. I actually don't know the answer to that. I would warn anyone against using Google for comparison. We're not allowed to use Google imagery for comparison when we're mapping on OpenStreetMap. It's proprietary. Yeah, thanks for the question. Good question. So please feel free to continue mapping after this session. Really, this session is just the start. This session, I've trained you how to map roads in this project. Please feel free to continue mapping this project. The project needs to be completed. This is kind of encouraging all of you to continue mapping until the 29th of April, so next week, on these projects. Please use the methods that I've kind of described here. Please save frequently. So pressing save in the upper right-hand corner as often as you can. Not every time you add a road, that would slow you down a bit, but it's good to save frequently. Otherwise, if your session crashes, you lose your work. And always mark your square as complete or incomplete once you finish mapping. And really encourage you all to continue where you can. 1 hour is quite a long time to be mapping constantly. Most people, when they engage with this type of volunteering, just do it for 2 or 3 minutes, or 5 minutes, just in gaps here and there. Once you get the hang of it, it's kind of therapeutic and relaxing thing to do. And it's great to be contributing towards COVID vaccination campaign.